Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 55 of the Future of Work show. If you've been following us for a while, you know that we try and study trends in the world that are impacting the place of work. So we've had conversations around the future of work, work arrangements. We've had conversations around the future of technology and how that's impacting the way we work. For the last few weeks, though, we've been focused on a trend that we're seeing increasingly, which is career transitions. This is backed by, of course, a lot of data. The World Economic Forum itself predicts that in the next 5 years, we're going to see a churn of 25% in the organized sector, which means about 25% of jobs are going to change fundamentally. And for those jobs that still exist, 40 to 50% of the job content will change. So that's just an indicator of how much change lies ahead. And a little bit about Uncube. Uncube is a consulting, advisory, and research organization. We both work with secondary data and primary research of our own. If you're following us on our page, we've just recently launched a series of observations on the multi-generational workplace in India. This is a fairly large study in collaboration with Jeevatham. And we have over 6,000 participants from across big cities, smaller towns of India to just understand how the expectations of Indians change across generations. So do follow us if that's an area that you're interested in. But back to today's topic. Today's topic is career transitions. We've been speaking about career transitions for the last few weeks. Our first conversation was really on what does it mean to apply for a job when you are, searching for a second career. What are some of the tips and tricks you can use in that job application process? We spoke to recruiters to help understand how, how technology itself interprets your own experience. How do hiring managers interpret your experience? And in our last conversation, we focused on what does it mean to build a career in the passion economy. Now, today's focus is going to be sharp career transitions. And I have with me a very special guest, someone whom I like and admire very much, Shreyasi. Welcome, Shreyasi.
Hi, Shalini. So good to be here, and thank you for having me.
Delighted, always delighted to speak to you, Shreyasi. We have to catch up otherwise as well.
Yes.
But welcome back to the show. So one of the reasons why I thought of you, Shreyasi, was that, your own career has taken such interesting turns. And I really want to ask you, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you go from being a journalist to being a bestseller author to now becoming such a successful entrepreneur? Harappa's done so well. I've seen bits and parts of that journey myself. And of course, now that you're part of the UpGrad family, its future looks even brighter. So how do you do all of this? How do you go from being a journalist to being an author to becoming a CEO founder? It's just amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, I don't think any of us fully quite know how we managed to do something looking back. I don't think this is a script that, you can write to perfection. But, to be helpful, if I was to think about how or why this has happened, and I think the success is a happy eventuality, but I think even the effort to try and make these switches is much more intentional. I do feel like I think it comes from first knowing yourself. I think you really do need to know yourself. I think there's much greater intentionality about what you're trying to do, right? Like for yourself. And I think, I don't think we do that when we are starting our careers in our 20s or whatever. But I think after, especially in mid-career, which was for me, it was a mid-career transition or several transitions, I really tried to dig deep. For example, just before, we incorporated Harappa in early 2018, I remember writing, this personal vision statement for myself, because there were just so many thoughts in my head. I had left journalism by then, and I knew that I did not want to go back to media. So I knew what I did not want, right? I think I'd written a book, but I knew that no book pays for people's lives, right? So that's not a sustainable model of livelihood. I had, been a part of an higher education initiative, like a women's only 18-month program. But I also knew that I was going to outgrow that, right? So I was really confused, I think, in winter of 2017. And that personal vision statement, which came after like 6 weeks of real, khichdi in my head about, what should I do? came up with this one sentence of, I want to be recognized for building something of scale and impact. And then I underlined the words recognize, scale, and impact, right? And it just felt true because, and I put it up and I stuck it in the inside sort of, door of my wardrobe, because then you see it every day. And I think that, especially when you're trying to do sharp career switches like this, there is some serendipity, but I think there's also a lot of intentionality. And I think intentionality has to be at the why level. And once that why is actually fixed, is what said, hey, if I want scale and impact, it has to be a tech-enabled business. If I want scale and impact, you mean you have to build a brand that is going to be recognized, right? If I want scale and impact, means that influences the funding model that you go after. That, sorry, I don't maybe have the patience to bootstrap or whatever, for scale and impact, maybe it's better to have external funding. So actually that one statement, at least over the last 5 years, has really, or even our recent, the fact that we're now part of UpGrad, also came from the fact that there is obviously greater potential for scale and impact when you're part of a large organization. So for me, I feel like the tool that has helped the how, as you're asking the sharp twist, at least in the last 5 years, has been that personal vision statement that has really been like so valuable.
Wow, Shreyasi, can I ask you to share a little more about how did you make this, how did you come up with this personal vision statement? Because, I mean, you're in the same field, so you know that a very large majority of the workforce in India, in the corporate world, now the statistics range from whatever, 75% to 88% are unhappy, actually. They're not happy in the work that they do. And yet they find themselves stuck. They don't know what, if not this, what else. And that's such a, it's not the happiest of places to be. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, how does one even start with, you said you took 6 weeks. Like, what did you do in those 6 weeks? I'm really
just thought a lot. Like, I think, when you just constantly think, because I was in an unhappy place in my career, right? I felt like just an unhappy place, stuck, not knowing what to do, what should be the right thing. I think the process leading up to that was maybe a list of what I don't want, right? And I think that is a doodling exercise that everybody can begin, like anybody who's listening to us, at least say what I don't want for sure. Second, I think that's also really important. What are my privileges, right? And I think I was very conscious of the fact that I did have the privilege to not be able to earn for a few months, right? I didn't have the privilege that I never had to earn again, but I did have the privilege, and I think many of us have that privilege. Of course, it means you contain your lifestyle for 3 or 6 months, though that's not the time when you take your best vacation. It's, it's not like, you're not going to go to the Andamans to do this thinking. No, I feel like, but I did have the privilege to do that. I think you have to list all your privileges. Then third, I think list all your skills, and skills, not your experience. And I think that's the work that we do at Harappa as well. And I'm constantly surprised that even experienced professionals sometimes can't disassociate the skill from the function or the industry. But really, what is my skill? Like in my role as M&A head or whatever at somewhere that I did, or in my role as a marketing person in an FMCG, I'm just examples of corporate careers. What is the real skill that I can transfer? So I think that was my third list, right? And fourth list was, what do I want to achieve? Like really what I want to achieve. I think that in a way is the most honest conversation that you need to have with yourself. Like for me, I knew that I also, the scale and impact, and even the scale and impact was, especially as a woman, I do want to create wealth for myself, right? And we're not used to socialize to say these things, right? So some of that feels very icky when you say it, because wealth, not so that we can buy nice clothes and bags and holidays, and that too, but really because of the autonomy it gives you, the confidence it gives you, the ability it gives you to make other things happen for your friends and your family, right? So I think when I wrote that, no, I do want to create wealth for myself. I do want to be wealthy. That's a really honest moment of, for all of us have grown with, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
values in the 80s and 90s of, you don't chase wealth, you only chase education. And I actually encourage many more women to say that I want to create wealth, which is not that I want to have a high salary, right? And then when you say that, you know that having equity in a company is the only way to create wealth. So you almost have no option then to, and then when you combine those four lists together, is when kind of ideas start to emerge. But I think you have to lead from your ambitions and have a very strong sense of both your privileges and constraints, and what you do lies somewhere in between.
I love this explanation. I love it. I'm actually going to ask you at some point, just tell me those four lists. Because, so many people are struggling with this, they're not happy with where they are, and they know that what they want in life is something else. Uh, but they're not sure what to do next.
Yes.
And, you said you took 6 weeks to write a personal vision. That's an act of immense, clarity.
Yes.
I've been doing career coaching sessions of the last few weeks, and I know that all of us, and me included, at different points in time in my life, we're like stuck. We're not clear. We're not clear. We
Yes.
know what we don't want to do, and that's why I love what you said. That start with what you don't want to do, and then you use that, use your skills, an honest look at what is it you really, really want as a person. And Shreyasi, firstly, congratulations on building wealth. Congratulations.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm like super admirer, well wisher. You've just done this whole process so well. But the fact that this can be broken down into 3 or 4 active steps,
Yes.
and like you said, these 4 lists that came together, and as soon as they came together, some things were in and some things were out. You didn't say that, but I'm saying it, that's some things were automatically out. You wanted scale, there was technology, there was wealth creation, all of that meant a certain kind of business. And being able to admit it for yourself, I love that you spoke about how difficult it is often for women to admit that. It's just, there is a gender play there. Women are much more socialized to think of impact or think of uh, education, or is something else. But even if they were to dig deep, and maybe it's wealth, but they would perhaps hesitate greatly in owning that up. Yes,
Yes.
this is what I
Yes.
want to do. So that is super, super helpful. Tell me, how did you discover what skills from your journalism career, or from your being such a successful writer, were going to translate into being an entrepreneur? Because it's not a very common transition. Let's start there. It's not a very common transition. So, like, how did you know you were going to be able to do that?
So, I think I really do confuse people. And over the last 4 or 5 years in the world of business and startups, like I keep saying, I'm like a core diversity candidate, somebody who was running sort of like a tech enabled business as a second career. I obviously wasn't in my 20s when I started it, I was in my late 30s. Non techie, non MBA. So I think my journey is very confusing for most people. And I can see, and especially earlier, in the early couple of years of Harappa, people looking at me, saying, "Oh, how is she exactly doing this?" Because, there's nothing that she's doing is linked to what she's done before. I actually didn't see it like that. And it's been so interesting that for me, with Harappa especially, it has felt like, oh my God, this is what I should be doing. It has actually felt much more natural, even if it has felt so unnatural to others, right? Because we
Wow.
haven't seen so many of these journeys. But for me, Shalini, in all honesty, it felt like this was the thing that I should be doing. This is right. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it immediately felt natural. And I think that 3 core skills that from journalism of my previous life, that like I feel like became a great fit for an entrepreneurial journey with Harappa, was one, I think, the skill that journalism gives you, which I think all founders and even senior leaders really apply is this ability to learn a new theme or body of knowledge in a very efficient and quick manner, right? I think what do journalists do if you think about it? They go in and they ask a set of questions, right? Just conversations. It's not like there's any special whatever. It's just actually a series of questions. And the series of questions lead to a very systematic, almost understanding, a structured understanding, an efficient understanding of body of knowledge. And I think that's a skill I've used so much, whether trying to understand technology, trying to understand product, trying to understand assessments, trying to understand brand. It's exactly that, asking a series of structured, systematic questions to very efficiently gain certain confidence in, understanding of a subject. Second, I feel like people have to identify themselves as, hey, do you have the creator's urge or not? I actually feel like, journalists or and artists and illustrators, I think so many people who are seemingly in things that you create, you start with a blank Word document and a 10, 20, 30-minute conversation. Journalists write the first draft of history. Now, of course, we're all dismayed by the quality of that first draft of history in many publications, whether here or around the world, but that is the core offering that journalism provides, is that journalists are writing the first draft. It's a very strong creator's urge, and it's a very strong creator's ability to take a blank Word doc and type away something and make meaning of important, difficult subjects for others, right? So I think, and that's what founders have, right? Eventually, what do founders have? It's a creator's urge to build, right? I think this urge to create and urge to build is, I think, a very shared value, as I see it, between journalism, artists, or whatever, and what a founder does. So I think that's the second commonality of skills. And the third one I would say is deadline orientation, and knowing that no draft of history, since it's the first draft of history, it's never the final draft of history. The story evolves, and I think companies evolve. I feel like you've talked about sharp shifts for me from journalism to Harappa. Even in Harappa in the last 5 years, given what has happened to the world of work, world of learning, world of edtech, right? So it feels like 3 different companies that one has run in these 5 years. The fact is that you kind of understand that there is, you do ship a lot, like you deliver, like for journalists, the 9 p.m. broadcast happens. If you're a television journalist, whatever information and whichever guest you can bring on, the newspaper goes to bed at 10 p.m. every night, right? Even when the story is evolving. But yet you have the fearlessness to sometimes, have to ship an incomplete product and go back and revise. I find that this kind of combination of constantly releasing, shipping, adhering to a strict deadline, yet always having the confidence and the optimism that an iteration is a constant evolution, is very similar to the life of a founder as well. So I think those 3 things, I think really kind of mindset wise, right, really did help in my role as a founder and a CEO.
Were you able to come up with this when you were making your list, or is this? No, just curious because.
No. I don't think I quite. I think the first one, yes. I think the first one is a confidence that you can speak to anyone of great seniority, because that's another thing that journalism gives you, has always been access to people and the best in their field. So you don't, you do have the confidence to ask somebody who's an expert a set of questions, and you are the layman. So that takes a kind of, both work to be able to ask smart questions of somebody who's at the top of the game and you know nothing, and for them to invest the time to tell you. So I think the questioning bit I knew. The other 2, no, not so much. I think the other 2 has been, as people like you have asked me, what has worked. I feel the other 2 has emerged as a skill that, looking back, I can connect the dots. Also, I do want to add another point, that as a journalist, I was a journalist on entrepreneurship, right? Especially as my stint at Inc. as the editor of Inc. in India, which is sort of an iconic magazine of entrepreneurship, right? Every month I was in a way taking out 70, 80 pages on entrepreneurship. And in a way, it was like a mini PhD in entrepreneurship. And I think what I got, and I think the desire or even the real visualization of saying, hey, I could be an entrepreneur came from the fact that, I have to stop living vicariously, right? Like if I'm writing all these articles about branding and, performance, reward design and all, I should put them into practice. So I think the fact that journalism was on entrepreneurship, especially towards the end of my journalism career, I think obviously helped. So I thought that I had put in one of my skills when I was making that list, is to say an understanding of businesses, right? Or an understanding of breaking down the components of a business as a writer of entrepreneurship, right? And understanding of what entrepreneurs go through. Although what you actually go through, no journalist can write about. But I think I put that as a skill and not so much these other two.
Now, just to share, when I started off on my own, the first thing I did, because I had no idea what this was going to mean, like none whatsoever, was I did a research study with an investing company. That can I just meet all your founders, interview them, and I'll come up with something. And that whole piece was just about understanding, what's a founder's journey like. And as you said, it's just an external view. It's very different from when you're in it. But it allowed at least some familiarity, external, but still something that at least allowed me to think about, okay, is this even something that is for me or not? And I think I'm wondering if you think that that's a helpful step for people who are, considering careers, to find some way to have access to what those, that field really looks like, or that set of careers looks like, while they are trying to work out whether that's something that they're really interested in doing or not.
Oh, completely. And Shalini, I do think that many of us have more resources in being able to understand a certain field than we think we do, right? And I feel like you should be a little bit guided by your curiosity. Like, and there's this whole concept of a whole body yes, right? Like, I think if you know yourself a little bit, you'll know what actually excites you, right? Like, what are you going down a rabbit hole on, whether it's on Instagram or on LinkedIn, what kind of articles? I think all of those are clues, right? And I think the biggest clue, therefore, then after this is to say, we don't need to limit. Like, there are three things, right? Like, the three themes that I'm broadly interested in. I think most people, most professionals are so happy to share, and I think everybody considers it a compliment when you
Yeah.
write them even a cold email or a cold LinkedIn to say, listen, I am so and so, and I've been been really pulled towards this theme, but I just don't feel. I would love if can I come and speak to you? I actually feel people are in a very professionals are in a very not giving mode, but in a very, I think everybody's trying to connect with each other, and most professionals see it as great flattery and compliment if they're sought out for advice. So I always feel like, why aren't people? I mean, people should do that much more, and then not become picky about, oh, I'll do it only on my day. Then if you have to travel from Gurgaon to Noida, then please do it. Then don't make it difficult for the other person. I feel like there are a lot of intention, but that the little minuscule inconveniences of a day which is not going to be relevant, like, stop people from taking some very. So actually, the fifth list could be, who are the 5 or 7 people I must speak to, and and put a deadline on it, right? Like, the 7 people I must speak to, and okay, I'm going to take 4 weeks to do this. 3 I will do online, and 4 I will try and meet in person. So I think we do have much more control of this process if we break it up into steps and kind of create like a roadmap of it. It is possible, and there's no loss. Like, there is no way that you will feel like you wasted your time if you went down this and say, hey, maybe setting up a bakery is what I'm interested in, and go and spend time 5 bakery. You still have nice coffee, have a nice cookie, and you meet somebody interesting who's running the business, right? So I actually feel there's nothing to lose by doing some of this simply.
I think that's a great suggestion. I'm linking this to something you said earlier, Shreyasi, about intentionality. and how intentionality is such a big part of being able to make these career transitions. You use the personal vision as a trigger to get started, but it sort of connects all of this, that okay, if I want to do something different, it means I do now need to do things that are not part of my daily routine, like
Yes.
reaching out to people, saying, can we have a cup of coffee or whatever. So uh, you have to be able to go beyond your regular, business as usual stuff, to start creating space in your life for this new, potential new at that stage,
Yes.
potential new exploration, let's call it. Wondering if you have any other
I have
ideas.
another tip. I have another tip.
Please.
Which has really helped me, and this has actually helped me more as running Harappa, because I've had to learn so many new things, as most founders have to. I've also realized that, listen, whatever journey you come from, especially towards being a founder, there's no way that you would understand the legal aspect and how contracting is done to how finance. Everybody will have to learn. I've now understood that my imposter syndrome was saying, hey, I did not tech and I wasn't an MBA. I'm like, but I have a facility with words, and there is, which is an advantage that some of them would. I mean, I think the learning curve is as steep for everyone in some ways. What has really helped me is, if I'm trying to make a decision or understand a topic beyond asking the questions, is podcasts. Like I keep saying, a podcast a day has been, like, in a way, my biggest tool while running Harappa. So for example, you want to set up your performance appraisal system. That 1 week I have a 30-minute commute from work to office. That 1 week, every morning and evening, like the first thing I get in my car is, I would have like 4 or 5 podcasts on Spotify. Just search performance appraisal systems. You're amazed at how many amazing conversations there are there for you to tap into. And again, it's just go through 5 or 10 of them, and in a week you can, if you're just disciplined, in a week you can actually do 10, because morning and evening, right? So I sit in the car, start the podcast, then I brush my hair, put on my kajal, eat my breakfast. Everything is happening in those 30 minutes. But it has been such an efficient 30 minutes, and podcasts have really been my biggest teacher, like huge. And like I keep saying, muft, like 0 rupees spent. Like I don't even have a pro account on Spotify, right? Like I'm still seeing the subscriptions. So those things are possible.
So that brings me to an area where actually, Shreyasi, you have expertise both ways. One is your own personal journey, but also because of the work that Harappa does. Uh, One of the perhaps big things in a career transition is, while of course owning what you actually know and what you're bringing in, like in your case you spoke about the deadline orientation, or the ability to iterate or ask questions, not be intimidated, all the things that you already have, and you owning that. But then there's also this piece of recognizing all that you do not know. And very often just knowing this long list of things you actually don't know is pretty intimidating, particularly if it's a sharp enough career switch, because obviously I'm sure if you had at the early stages made a list, it would have been pretty long. So do you have any tips for helping people get comfortable with the idea that you know it's fine if there's a whole lot that you do not know, and that itself is a process?
Isn't it exciting that there's a whole lot that one doesn't know? What's funner than being able to learn something that you didn't know? I mean, it's such a great moment, right? When you feel like, wow, like to see your own self grow and your own mind grow, is, I really feel like a great privilege. And even team members keep asking me, Shreyasi, how do you do what you're doing and whatever. I do think about what I've surprised myself with, especially in the last 5 years at Harappa, is I didn't think I would be such a fast learner. And you're right, to make these career transitions, I think you do need to develop a very high functioning learning muscle, right? And it is a muscle, it's not an innate, genetic trait. Wherever you are on how you learn, you can get better. And that, I think, after Harappa, having worked with a million working professionals now, right, from the age groups of 28 to 55, which is really most of our work is in enterprise learning, right? So it's not like, Harappa works with very young audiences. It works with the kind of people who you are speaking with too on career transitions, right? 28 to 55 and a million learners. almost the foundational skill of being able to make career transition is understanding how you learn and how you learn best, right? Like, so for me, podcast is how I learn the best. I feel like some neural connection happens when the earpiece is closer to the brain, like the physical proximity to the brain. It just, I've identified that, right? I used to be a voracious reader because I was a liberal arts student. So I mean, always, all my life, I've been a voracious reader. But I've realized in the last 5, 7 years, that's the one sort of patience and habit that I've lost, right? But now, when a great nonfiction book emerges and one is, the FT is reviewing it or you hear reviews about it, what I do is just listen to 5 podcasts of that author talking about the book. And all authors do these podcast rounds during the book. And in 5, you pretty much know the core gist, because obviously they're showcasing the best bits. So it's like it's the best shortcut, best hack to be able to get access to that information in a format that I enjoy, that works for me, and that's viable for my life, right? And I think in learning, there are many ways to. So some people learn much more in an apprentice model, right? That they learn from people who've done it, which is why people will write these, especially young people, there's just like an epidemic of looking for mentors, right? Because they believe that that's the only way that you can learn. But there are people, even professional, seasoned professionals, who learn much more in an apprenticeship model, right? Then there are people who learn much more sort of, like for me, it has been podcasts. Some people learn by writing everything down, right? Some people learn by doing courses and watching videos. So I think just kind of think about the last 3 skills that you have learned and what was the process of learning them, and that can actually give you interesting tips about, or clues again, into which ones were the most efficient, and so that you can build the right kind of learning format for yourself, because you will have to learn a lot if you want to do career transition. So the more efficient and mindful you are of how you learn best is going to be again a huge asset.
Wow, this is such a positive conversation because I can already see the whole, the stepwise emerging what the process might look like for many people, right from, understanding in your case, how you created the personal vision with your 4 lists coming together, to owning up your ambition, owning up what is it that you already have, recognizing that you probably have access to more people than you often realize, but you have to perhaps go out of your way a little bit to maybe ignite those conversations, but making space in your life for exploring those areas while you're, trying to figure that piece out. And then, of course, this very, very, I think, very concrete idea of how do you learn best, because you're going to have to learn a lot. If the career transition is as sharp as yours, there's a lot of learning that's going to happen quite fast. And it's both, of course, your own capacity to learn, but it's also knowing, how do you build your capacity to be its best, which is, what formats do you learn best in, how do you build that into your your daily lifestyle. Like for you it was the commute, for somebody else it could be a walk, whatever that is. But there's just that. So it's actually, for me, it's really interesting. It's almost demystifying the
Yes.
process of what a career transition looks like. And I'm just going to take some of the comments. Thanks, Nikhil, for your suggestion. He says, here's a fantastic book to help get unstuck in one's work life. It's called Designing Your Life, using principles of design to grow into new kinds of work. By the way, Nikhil, that's one of my favorite books as well. And I actually think, and this whole idea of using design thinking for designing your career, particularly for people who are early in their careers, but it's actually true even later, uh, where this understanding of, what kinds of work bring me joy. And
Mm.
because we're so accustomed to getting through the day in a checklist format, sometimes we don't ask ourselves, okay, we did this 100 bullet item checklist, but of this work, what really gave me joy, what energized me, and that becoming a lead anchor into understanding, okay, so that's the kind of work which I need to have in my life, because that's what really energizes me. All of us are going to have to do stuff we don't really want to do because of, it has to be done. I don't think anyone can get away from that struggle. But all of us also want to design our life around the work that we actually enjoy. So this whole idea of, what brings us joy, becoming more conscious of that, and weaving that and crafting our careers with that as, you know, uh, either the centerpiece or at least a fairly significant part of what we do. Um, there's another question. Akash, hi Akash. Hello, this is really amazing information to learn about one's career, but is there any crash course for creating wealth? I'm going to let you answer.
No, unfortunately, Akash, if you find one, send it to me as well. But there isn't, and I think here it's a great question, a segue to what you were saying. Actually, I have a slightly contrarian view to the joy seeking, right? Because sometimes it's also what pain is worth the work that you're doing and for why, right? So in a way, entrepreneurship, given how much blood, grit, and tears it takes, is maybe not the most joyful and joyous of an everyday activity, right? But I think it's purposeful, right? So I think if you are seeking joy, which many people in a transition could be at a certain stage in their career, I think you have to match your values to your ambitions, right? Like I can't be saying I want to create wealth and feel like that will come only from me doing things that I enjoy, right? In sometimes it's roles which are the toughest, and actually all senior leaders and especially founders and CEOs, I think half the job is to do the tough work and sort of chew the glass, which others don't want to, but and it's not enjoyable for anyone as a human being. But the fact is, your why is to create wealth. So I think I sometimes find, like, and maybe in 5 years, right, or in 7 years, I would say that all I want to do now is truly love every minute of what I do, right? And in that, then my personal vision statement would change, and it should change, and we want to find soul instead of recognition, find meaning, peace, and soulfulness, right? At that point, I can't say recognition, scale, impact, and wealth. So I feel like this matching is sort of really, really critical, so that you're not disappointed, and whatever transition that you've made is a shift. So either what you find joy in or what pain is worth it. I think choose your lane.
Perspective, that is. I see a question from my partner, Papia. She says, you have raised a very valid point on networking with the relevant people. When people are not comfortable with networking, how does one even create that mindset?
I think, at Harappa, we have a course actually, which, because I think then networking as like, much like strategy and negotiations, they're like some such like difficult words that only super sharp people should do. And networking has this almost icky connotation of being sort of, a social class. I mean, I think people have all kinds of connotations of, from networking. Therefore, we kind of reframed it to say expanding your network, right? It's not about networking, but the purpose is to expand your network. And the networking is not going to, like, schmoozy evenings where you're trying to slide up to the most important person in the room and trying to get their attention. No, I think it doesn't even need to. If you know that that's not your best energy, right, and you're actually good writer, a cold email to 5 people or a cold LinkedIn whatever to 5 people is a way to expand your network and meet somebody one-on-one in a coffee shop that's comfortable to you and to them, right? And in that conversation, come prepared to ask them thoughtful questions. Then you're not sort of wasting anyone's time. So I feel like we need to take away this all of these kind of strange connotations that networking has developed, because really at the core it is expanding your network, building human connections, it's finding new friends. I mean, especially after a certain age, I think you have to do that work to find new friends. So it's not in the large format events always, and it's not like in being seen in the view room. The fact is, can you meet, let's start with one new person a month, right? And one new person a month can even be from your company. If people are in large companies, maybe they've never met the creative head, or they're working procurement, they've never really gone and spent time with somebody on the on who's on the brand side, and they could say, hey, could we have lunch together in the cafeteria downstairs on this day? So I think it can be much smaller circles, if you so choose, and that's the way you want to begin. But the tip I always give is start with a person a month, take that up to 2 people a month. Then, when you sort of have more time or energy or whatever, depending on what you want to do, take that to one person a week, right? And then it doesn't sound so scary. Start with your friends and people who you already know. And if they've talked about a friend or a colleague, and say, hey, that's the kind of work that I've been really interested in. I'd love, that sounds fascinating. I'd love to know more. Can you introduce me? Introduce people. Always try and think of who are the 2 people who you think should meet, right? Like not in a matchmaking way, which we would do for friends earlier, but in a way of matching interest, right? Like how can you help people find similar interested people? I think most people really value those kind of introductions. So start by, maybe it feels icky that you're not kind of being sort of exploitative as a networker. Start by giving and make 3 introductions of 2 people to each other this month. Say, I'll always, I think these are little things we can actually put on a calendar and do as tasks to demystify, all of this. These are actually very simple tasks if we look at them as tasks, and they all build up rather than approaching it from a very top down sort of a networking angle.
In fact, firstly, I totally agree with this part, because I think networking is uncomfortable for many people because of an image that it has, that you're
Yes.
going to go to a large event and try and get the attention of the most influential person there and somehow strike up that conversation, and then from there something's going to happen. And I'm sure it happens for some people, but it's not, I would say, as common as you would imagine. It isn't. In the large events, in fact, your influential people are probably tired of meeting the number of people who want to speak with them. For many other people, the right path could be just one-on-ones, and it's the one-on-ones which for some people are the right format. It's where they feel they're genuinely building a connection, or they feel that they're getting answers to some curiosity that they have about the work that the other person is doing. So I do think networking can, if you would call it something else, like even
Yes.
okay, finding out about something by speaking to 10 people, many more people would say, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with calling up 10 people. This is research. This is
Yes.
research.
Yes.
I'm just doing research, because I know the moment I feel uncomfortable and I put anything as, okay, this is research, I feel, okay, that I can do. I can call
Yeah.
it. Okay, here's my question. Please tell me what do you think about this? That
Building
was
connections, I call it anything, building connections, right? And it's always, I think, every new person that you meet leaves you with something. So yeah, it's easier than we imagine. We're a country of 1.4 billion people. Most of us are living in metropolises where people are kind of on top of each other in our tech parks and in our office spaces, right? I don't think it's if you want to, I think, one person a month, as sort of a new person is not
yeah.
unviable or unsustainable.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you one last question, Shreyasi. We spoke about this in our last conversation, the emotional journey of being an entrepreneur, and what did it mean for you making this switch? You spoke a little bit about what that felt like on the inside. Just would love to hear from you.
So I think one of the things about especially transitions, and I think for me the transition into entrepreneurship, but certainly of transitions in general, is you are going to be the newcomer to the field. So it is you are the outsider, right? And you're not part of the insider group to begin with, right? You do have to earn the right to kind of be a part of the insider group, or sometimes actually continue to be slightly on the outside. Sort of being an outsider is a better view often than being at an insider is, right? So I do think you need to build comfort with being that outsider. So, for example, somebody working in a financial services company, wants to become, a baker and set up a pastry shop, right, or a cafe. the people they'll be meeting with, they will be newcomers to all of those people, whether it's, who you get your raw materials from, to, people who are doing branding, whatever. So I think it takes some time to, all of us, our human urge is to feel included, to belong, right? Like that's who we all want to have. And I think when you're making a transition to be an outsider, just take some emotional stamina to get used to. So that of course was one. I think entrepreneurship on its own, from whichever path you have come to, from a natural path. I don't even know what's a natural path to an entrepreneurship, because there is no. It's unlike, sort of professional. If a senior counsel and a lawyer, you will first be a lawyer and go. There is a path, I think. To entrepreneurship, there is no prescribed path, which is the right path in that way. Each entrepreneur has sort of a strange journey to where they feel like they want to be an entrepreneur. It's a very, I think, like emotional self-regulation, and how much emotional self-regulation you need to do as an entrepreneur is very, very tough. So I could be having this very, great conversation with you right now, and when we're talking about what you said, oh, it's really an uplifting conversation, it's really a positive conversation, but I could be coming off from a very tough conversation with a direct report, and maybe I have to, like a really uncomfortable people conversation. I will be going to a review meeting on my October-November, so right after this, right after this, where I know that, it's going to be a really, really difficult conversation, and then have a town hall at 4 p.m. where again you are expected to be, the optimist, and in a way, at least energizing people. So you actually live so many emotions in a day, that you really have to coach yourself to say, in this moment, for these 45 minutes and an hour, I have to be what I'm expected to be. Like I have to hit the right emotional soul needed for me in this conversation, and not have what happened before, which could have been a terrible, and not sort of be thinking about what is going to happen later, for which I need to prepare. That takes a lot of mind training to, kind of like live in, like have these different emotions without feeling like, what am I actually feeling? So you're kind of confused about your own emotions by the end of this jumbled week, which is really tough. And of course, then tough decisions and executing on tough decisions. So I think this being an outsider, at least for me, from a transition to entrepreneurship, this learning, this emotional self-regulation, find the right emotional soul, because that's what you're expected to be, right? I have both been very difficult, and take the tough decisions, and yet be able to explain to people why you took them, and why people disagree with you, or uh, don't appreciate you for taking that decision, and you need to understand that they're right to not like you at that moment, and you also can't want to be liked when you've made a decision that might eventually be good, but it's not helpful for them. So so they're not trying to seek comfort and popularity and being liked, which again is actually really tough, because again we all want to be liked and not just respected, right? But you have to make peace with saying, hopefully I'm respected, even if I'm not liked in some moments of tough decision making.
Yeah. I love this whole piece about, broadly emotional resilience. Of course, you're speaking of something very specific, both the ability or becoming comfortable with being an outsider, taking that position as an outsider, where perhaps being an outsider can even be helpful, because you're able to see things in a way which is different from those who've lived in that framework all their lives are able to see. So that being comfortable with the outsider position, and I absolutely agree. I think most senior leadership positions have this expectation of okay, 4 to 5 you're X, 5 to 6 you're Y, 6 to 7 maybe it's a team dinner and you're something else. And the emotional self-regulation you spoke about, being able to wear different hats And sometimes you barely have like 30 seconds to switch, from one hat to the other and, go on with it. Is just so true. I'm so glad you highlighted so much of it. So we're coming to the end of our conversation, Shreyasi. Just wondering if you want to leave our viewers with one or two things that you wish you knew when you began, this journey. Um, Tips about how perhaps they can take the first few steps about, figuring out what's right for them.
I actually feel now that I don't think many of us have an option but to have career transitions. I think it's a really strange sort of juxtaposition that we're all in, that we're hopefully all going to live healthy, physically healthy, mentally healthy lives till 85 and 90. But the world of work is changing every 3 or 5 years, right? Which means that all of us will have, as I think Richard Davey, Professor Davey from Harvard said, you're not going to have 6 or 7 jobs. You will have 6 or 7 careers. If you start working at 21 and you're going to work till 80, that's 60 years, right? So you will have maybe a career. So I think all of us need to, equip and understand this and engage with this idea that, what are my new careers, not new jobs. I think we think too much about my next job, but not my next career. And that's going to be its greatness that is going to be thrust upon you if you're not ready for it, right? And for some of us, obviously, who are seeking it out, right, might have us at least slight advantage of being prepared. But I think everybody can be prepared. So I feel like most of us should not feel like we have the luxury that a career transition, a sharp career transition, is not a part of our career roadmap. It is going to be, right? And I think because it is going to be, let's start engaging with it. And the second thing is the more optimistic thing, that I feel like as India is like a $2.5 trillion economy, goes to 6 trillion, $10 trillion. I feel like the next 8 or 10 years are going to throw up a lot of opportunity. There is, so much needs to fix, right? It's going to throw up a lot of opportunities. So the sharp career transitions are also happening as new opportunities are getting created, right? So it's sort of, you mix these two up, and so which means, imagine, like, at least paint the picture of all of the possibilities and sharp career transitions that are possible for you, and then choose, right? Like, force yourself to imagine 3 or 4 completely sharp career transitions, and then maybe settle with that, which is kind of the design thinking prototype, at least on a notepad, what it would look like, right? So I think the exciting times, but we all need to work with more intentionality and discipline to be able to use those opportunities.
So well said, Shreyasi. So well said. And I totally agree, by the way. I think this skill, it's almost a skill set. How do I
Yes.
make these sharp career transitions, move from one field to the other? I've moved from academia, practitioner, consulting, entrepreneur, and each of them has asked for such a different part of me. But once you've done at least, a few, I'm not trying to say I'm like some amazing success story or anything, but there's at least you're more comfortable the next time round.
Yes.
How do I experience this? I expect I'm going to be in shock for a while, for instance, while I'm figuring out, what this really means. I expect that I'm going to have to learn a lot really quickly. I expect I'm going to feel confused at the start, and that eventually that confusion will clear, because nothing is really all that complicated the moment you get down to it. There's absolutely nothing that's that complicated. So it's just this whole piece of uh, getting practiced at
Yes.
it, even though every time it's going to feel different, but still getting comfortable with the idea, getting practiced with, how would I approach something like this. Super, super helpful. So on that note, Shreyasi, really want to thank you. So happy to have you back on the show. And I want to wish you all the best for the next stages of Harappa, and then whenever it's time for the next career transition for you, whatever lies ahead.
Thank you so much, Aldi. Thank you so much. Always lovely chatting with you. And I think such a fascinating uh, and relevant topic. Right now, fascinating, but more importantly, relevant and important topic. So have a great weekend, and thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, we come to an end of today's episode. Please follow us if this is a topic you're interested in. Subscribe to our newsletter. We have almost 60,000 subscribers now. So join the many others like you who are following some of these ideas with us. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Future of Work show. And with that, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.